What's going on, everyone? I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle alongside Jay Arnold for our last breakdown of the season. Jay, how's it going, buddy?
It is going. Just seems like the end of the year kind of snuck up on us. Feel like this season has kind of flown by. I feel like this year has kind of flown by. So kind of just hanging onto the seat of my pants as we get ready for 2023. And I can't believe that's a real number that I'm saying.
I can't. It kind of feels like the beginning flew by, and then that stretch of the six away games crept along, and then it flew by there at the end. It was a really weird season on multiple fronts. In that regard, let's go right into what happened in that season finale against LSU. Of course, the Aggies beat number 5 LSU at Kyle Field to end their season, a 5-win season, so no bowl games. Jay, what did you see? What you take from that final game that probably was A&M's most complete effort of the season?
I think the biggest takeaway is wow. Why couldn't we have done that for all the games? But other than that, looking at Texas A&M, like you said, it was a complete game. You knew you had a quarterback who was going to be problematic rushing, and I think for the most part, they did a good job of keeping him kind of contained as far as non-designed runs where Daniels was in the pocket. I mean, he broke a couple off late in the game where I think you kind of had to go into prevent defense if you're Texas A&M, and it's a little more understandable. But uh, obviously, you get a big turnover for a touchdown that kind of was the turning point of the game in my mind. Uh, with Demonte Richardson taking it for the scoop and score, and then offensively, I mean, fantastic performance. Devon Achane has his 215-yard game, 38 carries for, averaging over 5 yards a carry, has a couple touchdowns. I mean, what a way for him. And obviously, I don't know if he's declared one way or the other yet, but if he does decide to go to the draft, uh, what a way for him to go out. I mean, ran the ball extremely hard. But I want to give some credit to the offensive line too. I thought they did a better job than they have in years past. Obviously, going into this game, Harold Perkins was the guy that we had an eye on as far as creating pressure in the backfield and getting to Connor Wegman. LSU didn't have any sacks on the day, so I mean, you look at everything that A&M did against LSU, and I think you have to be happy with that performance if it can be replicated going forward in 2023.
Yeah, like you said, Von Achane, a big part of that. Him individually, I mean, he was out the 2 games prior with a leg injury. Jimbo Fisher said he was fighting back to be able to play in this game. Set a career high in carries and a career high in rushing yards, over 200 in the game. Gutsy performance by him. What's your take on him to start out with? But two, the schemes around him seem to be a little bit different and better. They went jumbo a little bit more, 22 personnel, 12 personnel. Jake Johnson got in there, had a great block against Harold Perkins on A-Chain's first touchdown run of the game. How much did A-Chain impress you? And then how much did the scheme look a little bit different on offense that kind of aided in the offense being a little more successful?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I mean, like you said, they mixed in some 22 personnel, got into some short yardage situations early on, and kind of allowed that jumbo personnel package to be brought in. You had Ernest Crownover, who actually I think had a pretty good game as a lead blocker as well. But yeah, seeing Jake Johnson in there, I mean, obviously Donovan Green has been the more active of the freshman tight ends so far this year. And, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Jake Johnson was dealing with some injury stuff going into this season. So having those two tight ends could be a fun situation for the offense going forward. But like you said about scheme, it's been kind of the running theme going this year is pre-snap motion versus not pre-snap motion. And I think we got a little bit of pre-snap motion to just kind of give LSU's defense some eye candy as well. And anytime that you can use that type of distraction almost to not let the defense get as settled, I think it helps quite a bit. And then players made plays. I mean, you look at Moose Muhammad's touchdown there at the end of the game with the one-handed catch. I mean, it just seemed like everything came together, scheme, players, uh, all meshed in a way that just kind of gave us the most complete performance that we've seen this year.
Yeah, there you go. I think, and two, offensive and defensive lines looked really well. What did you see from the offensive line a little bit? That was better. And then McKinley Jackson had a really good game as well.
Yeah, so I kind of brought it up whenever we were talking about Harold Perkins, but they didn't allow any sacks this
Mhm.
contest, which was huge against an LSU defense that is fantastic at rushing the passer. I mean, they basically took over the game against Arkansas by rushing the passer, and the A&M offensive line was able to kind of uh, to mitigate the pressure on Connor Wegman. And then I looked at in the running game as well. It just seemed like the offensive line wasn't getting pushed back as much. Now, some of that was, I think, they were pulling offensive linemen quite a bit, so it could have been a scheme thing where there was a little bit more pulling of offensive linemen involved, more trap, more power, more things like that. That maybe didn't give LSU time to kind of fire off and create that disruption in the backfield in the run game. But I mean, when you average 5.5 yards per rush and you have 274 yards rushing as a team, obviously a lot of that's Devon A-Chain, but Amari Daniels looked good when he was in there as well. That has to be credited to the offensive line. So again, that's something that should give A&M fans hope going forward if the offensive line can build off that performance. But again, we haven't seen that all year. We didn't see it until this game. So take it with a grain of salt. But know that this type of performance is a possibility for the offensive line, especially if they get a little more continuity and more time together, just with the amount of changes and injuries that the offensive line had suffered throughout the year. And then you also mentioned McKinley Jackson, who, I mean, was obviously the talk of the other line, the defensive line for the game. And I mean, he's just such a disruptive presence in the middle of the defense. Offenses have to account for him. I wouldn't be surprised, if he's healthy next year. Obviously, he had that elbow injury to start the season, which kind of hampered him. But what a performance. What a way for him to close it out and to announce that he's coming back. I mean, that's a huge win for the Texas A&M defensive line.
So we did it at midseason. Let's look at some grades for the season as a whole, because that was a really great way to end the season, but a little bit of an up and down season, as we know, all the way across. Let's start with offense. I know, well, first off, I know at midseason we went with your favorite kind of class, pass fail. We going to go pass fail again, or are we going to give letter grades? What are you feeling this time?
Let's go ahead and go letter grades this
Letter
time.
grades. Okay. Let's go offense first.
Yeah, so for the offense, you finish in the bottom half of the SEC. Obviously, the rushing attack is a little bit better than the passing attack, but it's still, for a lot of this season, the offense seemed to go missing. I think I give the offense, I have to give the offense an F, if I'm being honest, just because until the last game of the year, we didn't see too much growth. There was a good performance against Ole Miss, but other than that, I mean, it was a rough unit to watch, uh, especially with the expectations going into the season. Now, obviously, I think there are some things to build on. You played a lot of true freshmen uh, throughout the year, but still, for a unit that maybe had a little more hope going into this year, to put up the numbers that they did, I think you have to give it an F.
Sure, sure. Let's move on to defense.
So defense is a bit of a mixed bag, right? You have a defensive unit that gave up the worst. They were the worst in the conference in rushing yards. But on the flip side, they were the best in the conference in passing yards. So it's kind of hard to 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 really give up or to really pinpoint what the grade should be. Uh, I mean, I look at the points allowed too, and that at the end of the day is what keeps your team in the game or not, as if you're allowing points. And they were in the top 4 for points allowed. So with that in mind, I think I'd give this unit a C plus, just because while teams were able to run the ball against Texas A&M, the lack of points allowed kind of allowed this team to hang in games where maybe they wouldn't otherwise.
There you go. Special teams.
So special teams is another tough one. I think there were mistakes that cost this unit all year. Obviously, there were some kicking struggles early on. You had in the punt game, the false starts and the delay of games were really frustrating to see. I think we've talked about it on here that maybe those would be solved by having a dedicated special teams coordinator. But at the end of the day, Nick Constantino was one of the best players on this team. And because of him, I'm not going to give the special teams a failing grade. I'm going to give them a C for this season.
Yeah, it was a little bit up and down there on special teams. Sometimes it saved games, sometimes it cost a lot. Coaching. This will be an interesting one.
Yeah, so this is a tough one just because, I think a lot of it was dealing with injuries and dealing with variables that maybe you weren't expecting. At the end of the day, though, you have to be able to adapt as a coaching staff. So for the coaching staff as a whole, I think they have to get an F as well, just because the expectations for this group, I mean, I think preseason it was mostly 10, 9, 8 wins. And to come away without bowl eligibility, at the end of the day, that comes down to the coaching staff. So for this season, for the 2022 season, I have to give the coaching staff an F.
So with all those combined, what is your overall grade for the Aggies this year?
With all that combined, I think the overall grade is, I mean, can we give a D
Sure.
for the letter grade? I think we'll give
Sure.
a D. So maybe a little bit better than a flat out F, but not much better.
D's get degrees, but not bowl eligibility. Is that what we're saying here?
I think so.
Okay,
That's
good.
Perfect.
Good. So
Perfect analogy.
who is the Aggies MVP for the season?
I think it has to be Devon Achane. He was the only thing that kept the offense in games for a lot of the year. Obviously, we saw how much him being out affected this offense against Auburn. I think without a doubt that he was the most valuable player on this team, and even as a weapon in the special teams game early on. I mean, there are a few other guys you look at. I mean, like I said, Nick Constantino played a pretty big role in this team, but I have to give it to Devon Achane.
Sure. When you look at what Achane has done in his career, did this season, do you feel like he's a guy that maybe should go ahead and try to test the waters of the NFL draft or stay another year? What is your feeling on Achane?
Well, the thing about the NFL draft, especially if you are a running back, I think him being at that position makes it where if he gets a good grade back from scouts, I mean, even like a third or fourth round grade, I think it makes sense for him to go to the league just because, as a running back, your days in the league are numbered. And the fact that he's able to contribute in the passing game, for somebody who's maybe a little bit smaller in stature, he's still a very physical, hard runner. And then just the natural speed that he has that you can't coach. All of those factors make me believe that he will get a pretty good draft grade. And even if not, I still think that, for him at the running back position, going to the league is probably a good choice.
Yeah. So let's look a little bit to the future, because I know a lot of talk about where the future, especially the future of A&M's offense goes. Of course, offensive coordinator Daryl Dickey was relieved of his duties this week. A lot of talk, speculation on if Jimbo will bring in a guy and hand over the reins to the play calling moving forward. For this segment's sake, let's just say that Jimbo does hand over the keys to play calling. What do you think you see? What do you like in an offensive coordinator that will help energize this offensive group, but also be a good fit for the pieces they have and be a good fit for working with alongside Jimbo?
And that's the key, isn't it? Working alongside Jimbo, because even if Jimbo does give up the reins, I think there's still a certain way that he wants to see the game called. It's going to be tough because what Texas A&M has done on offense has been very different from a lot of the offenses that you see out there. you want to see somebody who's going to take advantage of the personnel that Texas A&M has. Uh, the biggest weapons that A&M has that you may not have at other schools is you have two fantastic tight ends. And I know we didn't get to see a lot of Jake Johnson, but him and Donovan Green together could be a real problem for defenses and matchups. And then you look at receivers like Evan Stewart and Moose Muhammad, and there's obviously some weapons to build around. The running back, we'll see what happens there. You'd imagine that it would probably be a committee with Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels next year, should Devon Achane decide to move on to the NFL. But I would like to see kind of like a power spread approach, maybe something not dissimilar from what Gus Malzahn had going at Auburn. The difference being that Connor Wegman, I think you don't want to run him as much just because you don't want to take a risk on him getting hurt. But because you have kind of the physicality in those tight ends, and you have gone to 22 and 12 personnel in the past, it's something that you can kind of build off of. And I just think the identity with the defense would be a more fitting approach to the offense rather than Jimbo's style. And then also, I think you want to see less ball control, if we're titling it that. Maybe not running the clock down so much and having to burn timeouts. Maybe add in a little bit of tempo as well.
Sure. So, as a whole with this team, 5 wins, miss a bowl, you would think that that is a trajectory pointed down. But on the converse, like you said, they have a quarterback in Connor Wegman. They have a wide receiver in Evan Stewart. They have pieces there. What's the trajectory moving forward? And is this a blip, or is this a sign of future things to come?
It's tough because while there was a positive note to end the season on, so much of the season was not good. Like you said, there's a lot of pieces there. Connor Wegman at quarterback is a big one. Texas A&M hasn't had the certainty at quarterback the past 2 years, and I think that Connor Wegman's performance towards the end of the season has answered that question. So that's positive. The strength of the Texas A&M defense this past year was the secondary. I do think that with Damani Richardson graduating and Antonio Johnson likely headed to the draft, again, I'm not sure on that one, but you're losing 2 key components there. And we saw how much Antonio Johnson being out hurt the Aggies. So I expect defense to take a step back in the back end. On the flip side, you get probably your best defensive lineman and most experienced defensive lineman in McKinley Jackson back. You played a ton of true freshmen there. You played some true freshmen on the offensive line. It will be interesting to see what kind of development takes place over the offseason, because it can go one of 2 ways. I mean, we could be like, I know this doesn't exactly answer the question, but it's kind of a fork in the road. Next year will be, I think you have pieces in place to really make an impact in the SEC, but by the same token, if you fall back into old habits, offensively or defensively, you could see some of the same results. There will be letdown performances, and it could be a continued downward trajectory. So we'll see what happens with the changes in the offseason. We'll see if steps are taken to capitalize on that last game of the season against LSU, and then I think we'll find out pretty early on whether A&M fans should be excited or worried.
Well, I'm hearing maybe one of the most important off seasons A&M has had in a really long time. Jay, it's going to be a while till we talk to you again. So maybe a good Christmas food recommendation, or just one in general. What's on your mind to carry the people over till next football season?
Yeah, I mean, when you think of Christmas, and I think there's generally 2 dishes that I've always seen as associated with Christmas, other than the classic milk and cookies for Santa. It's the Christmas ham, right? Or like a prime rib. And you can get a good smoked prime rib at a lot of places over the holidays. So if that's kind of more your jam, I think that prime rib could make watching bowl season from the sideline a little bit better for you.
Are you like a salted ham or like a sweet sugary ham kind of
Yeah,
guy?
I like the sweet ham. I think I like the like
Okay.
little bit of like a honey glaze kind of
Yeah.
deal. And then what I really like to do is get some leftovers and make like like a melt, like a ham and cheese, grilled cheese, like a lot of butter. Obviously, just we're not being healthy. Let's be honest here. In between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we're terrible time to start a diet. If you do, I'm so sorry, but between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we're just basically carb loading for the new year.
That's what New Year's is for, is to pretend like you're going to be healthy for a couple more months until you don't. So anyway, that is a great way, pretending like you're going to be healthy until you don't. That's a great way to sign this off for what we've done this year. Jay, thanks so much for being with us and breaking things down all of this season. I'm sure we'll bring you back on to the My Aggie Nation podcast and things like that throughout to break down some things before we hit next August. But in the meantime, we thank you and have a good off season.